Alright, let's dive into the fascinating world of Sir Walter Scott, the man who practically invented the historical novel as we know it. Scott was a Scottish novelist, poet and historian, and yes, that's been asked in exam. He's one of those rare writers who managed to balance a serious legal career with his passion for storytelling. While serving as a clerk of session and even later as a judge, he somehow found time to write some of the most enduring works in English literature. Now, Scott was a proud Tory, deeply rooted in Scottish tradition. He was active in the Highland Society and even served as president of the Royal Society of Edinburgh from 1820 to 1832. In 1820, he was made a baronet, Sir Walter Scott of Abbotsford, another detail that has been asked in exam. His title, however, became extinct when his son died in 1847. Scott was a towering figure in European Romanticism, yet unlike poets such as Byron or Shelley, he combined romance with history, showing how the past shaped the present. His novels became a model for historical fiction across Europe and America. Now, before Scott became a novelist, he was already a celebrated poet. Works like The Lady of the Lake and Marmion, both of which have been asked in exam, made him famous throughout Britain. But when Byron's poetic fame rose, Scott quietly switched genres, and that's when the magic began. Let's start with Waverley, published anonymously in 1814. This was Scott's first novel and one of the earliest historical novels in Western literature. The title page didn't carry his name. Instead, later novels were simply signed by the author of Waverley. That phrase has been asked in exam, so mark it down. The story follows Edward Waverley, an English gentleman and soldier who visits Scotland during the Jacobite uprising of 1745. He finds himself torn between loyalty to the English crown and his admiration for the Highlanders. There's love, conflict, adventure, and that moral dilemma of duty versus emotion that Scott loved so much. Interestingly, Waverley was so successful that the public immediately began guessing who the anonymous author was. By the time Scott admitted authorship in 1827, it was already the worst kept secret in literature. Next came Guy Mannering, published in 1815, and yes, another exam favorite. This is the second of the Waverley novels and it sold out on the very first day. Scott originally wanted it to be a supernatural tale, but it turned into a thrilling story of identity, fate, and redemption. The plot revolves around Harry Bertram, kidnapped by the smuggler Dirk Hatterek and taken to Holland. That's another exam point. He grows up under a new name, Van Beest Brown, unaware of his true identity. Years later, he falls in love with Julia Mannering, fights a duel, and nearly loses everything until his old gypsy nurse, Meg Merrilees, recognizes him and helps him reclaim his heritage. By the end, he wins back his estates and marries Julia. It's classic Scott, mystery, romance, and deep Scottish flavor. Then comes The Antiquary, published in 1816, the third of the Waverley novels, and again asked in exam. This one's especially interesting because Scott himself called it his personal favorite. The novel centers on an amateur historian, the antiquary whose passion for the past mirrors Scott's own. The love story between Lovell and Isabella Wardour unfolds against the backdrop of Scottish life in the 1790s. The book is rich with humor, warmth, and gentle irony, a blend of romance, comedy, and historical realism. Critic H.J.C. Grierson famously said that The Antiquary achieves a beautiful blend of truth and poetry. The setting the Scottish coast between July and August 1794 is vivid and atmospheric, filled with local color and folklore. So, what makes Walter Scott so important? Well, he didn't just tell stories, he built worlds. His novels connect the individual to history, the personal to the national. Through him, Scotland became a living character in literature. His works like Ivanhoe, Rob Roy, Waverley, and Old Mortality, all asked in exam, influenced not just English fiction, but also European Romanticism and even early American literature. Writers like Balzac, Tolstoy, and James Fenimore Cooper all admired him. Scott's storytelling taught readers that history isn't just dates and wars, it's people, passions, and choices. He passed away in 1832, leaving behind an incredible literary legacy, or as one critic beautifully said, he turned history into humanity. Let's begin with The Heart of Midlothian, often considered Scott's finest novel. It was published on 25th July 1818 as part of Tales of My Landlord second series under the pseudonym Jedediah Cleishbotham, a detail that's been asked in exam. The story takes place between September 1736 and May 1737, beginning with the real-life Portier's riots in Edinburgh. The novel follows Jeanie Deans, a working-class Scottish girl who embarks on a brave journey to London to plead for a royal pardon for her sister Effie. Effie has been condemned for allegedly murdering her newborn child. Jeanie's courage, faith, and moral strength make her one of the most moving heroines in English fiction. Despite mixed reviews at first, The Heart of Midlothian is now regarded as Scott's most emotionally powerful work, a blend of social realism, historical accuracy, and moral conviction. Now, let's move to Scott's most famous novel, Ivanhoe, a romance. It was published in 1819 in 3 volumes, and yes, that date has been asked in exam even though it's commonly referred to as Ivanhoe. This novel marks Scott's shift from Scottish to English medieval settings, and it became one of his most influential works. Set in 1194, during the reign of Richard the Lionheart, the story unfolds while Richard returns from the Third Crusade to reclaim his throne from his scheming brother Prince John. Scott drew heavily on Robert Henry's The History of Great Britain, that's a key exam fact, as well as Sharon Turner's History of the Anglo-Saxons and David Hume's History of England. He even used Chaucer's Canterbury Tales to capture the medieval atmosphere and Shakespeare's King John for the character of Prince John. The novel brings together knights, tournaments, and outlaws. Ivanhoe himself is a disinherited Saxon knight in love with Rowena, while the brave Rebecca, daughter of the Jew Isaac of York, nurses him after a tournament. The character of Robin Hood here, known as Locksley, joins Richard in rescuing captives from Torquilstone Castle, another event often asked in exam. With themes of chivalry, justice, and cultural conflict, Ivanhoe became a defining romantic adventure and shaped the image of medieval England in literature and film alike. Next comes Kenilworth, published on 13 January 1821, another part of the Waverley novels series. This one takes us to 1575, at the height of Queen Elizabeth's reign, a year that's been asked in exam, and revolves around the Queen's grand visit to Kenilworth Castle. At the heart of the tragedy is Amy Robsart, the secret wife of Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester. Leicester hides their marriage to preserve his position at court, fearing the Queen's jealousy. When Amy tries to reveal the truth, she is manipulated by Leicester's treacherous servant, Varney. He convinces everyone that Amy is insane and later engineers her death in a supposed accident at Cumnor Place. This plotline has also been asked in exam, particularly the detail about Leicester's complicity in Amy's murder. In the end, Varney poisons himself, Amy dies tragically, and Leicester eventually regains royal favor, though his moral downfall is complete. Kenilworth captures the splendor and cruelty of Elizabethan court life, ambition, secrecy, and betrayal wrapped in the pageantry of Tudor England. Together, The Heart of Midlothian, Ivanhoe, and Kenilworth show Scott's extraordinary range from Scottish realism to medieval romance to Elizabethan intrigue. He wrote about ordinary people caught in the tide of history, blending adventure with deep moral insight. And don't forget, Ivanhoe in particular was so influential that even later writers like Dickens, Thackeray, and Stevenson owed much to Scott's sense of history and heroism. Sir Walter Scott once said he wanted to make history familiar and romance credible, and these novels prove he did exactly that.